Hello, and welcome back to the Wishing You Well podcast, where we help you navigate your wellness journey each and every week. I'm Amy Albero.
And I'm Catherine Van Eyck. We're both licensed therapists and love to talk to you about wellness on Wishing You Well. And today we have a special guest with us. We are welcoming Clare Zecher. Clare is an athlete and coach who has been riding bikes and racing triathlons for more than 25 years. She has completed numerous Ironmans, marathons, 100 plus mile races, and competed in back-to-back world championships in 2018 at both the ITU Long Course World Championships and the Ironman 70.3 World Championships. Branching out from a love of cycling, she added criterion racing, road racing, cyclocross, and cross-country mountain bike racing to her repertoire. Clare is also a certified strength and conditioning coach, a certified personal trainer with ACSM, and a certified sports performance coach with USA Weightlifting. Clare's athletes range from coaches looking for mentorship to athletes looking to reach their next level. With both local and online one-on-one and group training available, she provides a unique training and coaching experience for her athletes. Today with Clare, we'll be discussing overcoming failure and disappointment when setting ambitious goals.
Yes, excited for this one.
Yes.
Living a full and well life is put together. Authentic.
We feel it.
Take care of
Okay, welcome, Clare. We're so excited for you to be here. And one thing that we like to do before we get started with our podcast is just really check in with one another and see how we're doing. It's so important for us to kind of get a little pulse check on how we're doing, how we're feeling, what we're needing, so we can readjust if we need to. So first, wanted to check in with you. How are you? And what does self-care look like for you these days?
Well, thank you. I'm doing really well. Thank you. It's kind of a crazy Monday, but things are going really well. And for self-care, my big thing is sleep. I figured it out maybe, sometime in my early 30s that if I didn't get enough sleep, I was not a happy person. And as I've gotten older and we now have all the data to understand how important things like deep sleep are, and how it controls everything in your life. And it has ramifications not only right now, but huge ramifications for down the road. So on a daily basis, my self-care is really going to sleep on time every night and not agreeing to commitments that mess up my sleep schedule. And occasionally I will, but I know that I have to plan 2 or 3 days after that to kind of catch up on my sleep and just accept that I'm not going to be able to do my regular routine. So an example would be like if there's a special event that friends invite us to on a Saturday night, and I'm talking, it's got to be something big that we're going to go to, like a dinner dance where I'm going to be up past 10 o'clock at night. I have to make arrangements that Sunday and Monday, I just have to have like jammies days because I got to have my sleep. And as I've gotten older, maybe in the last 10 years, I've also figured out how to nap, or to take even a 2 to 5 minute meditation. And that can reset me in the moment before I have a client, before I have something important going on, before a workout, especially if I'm frazzled from clients and I need to go into my workout. So even like a 10-minute power nap in my car or closing my eyes and doing 3 or 4 minutes of breathing, those are my huge self-care go-tos. How about you guys?
Well, before we get into that, I want to just say that, I have the pleasure of knowing Clare for, over 10 years or so at this point. And I know this to be true about you, Clare. Like, you have such great boundaries around sleep. Yes. And I see that come up when, when we're planning, doing dinners like that. It's more of a dinner than a dinner. So that, bedtime.
It's definitely lupper. Yeah. Come at 1, stay till 5. We're going to be crazy for like 4 hours or 4, but you have to get out of my house by 7. Yeah.
No, it's so great. And that's been such a helpful example for me as someone who, struggles with boundaries in general, but boundaries with sleep for sure. So I love hearing that. Catherine, how about you? How is your self-care? How are you doing?
Doing pretty Well, my self-care definitely has to do, well, like it's kind of similar to Claire's. Claire, I am 39 weeks plus 3 days pregnant right now.
Woo, congratulations.
Thank you. And so, could happen any day at this point. We're just waiting and seeing. So, my self-care is a lot of rest, and like in a way that I need to give myself permission to rest. And because like I'm a person that really likes to like tie things up and like make sure that things are like set in place in order for me to rest. And I need to rework that this week and be realistic with myself on like what I can actually achieve in that time, but also like trying to remind myself that, okay, wait, but also it's not like you're gearing up to go on vacation and you're going to be resting for, resting on a beach somewhere. You're not going to be resting. So take some extra time to rest. And I've had a really hard time to like convincing myself to do that, but I'm finally sinking in, finally letting it sink in and trying to embrace it while I can.
When you say rest, do you mean sleep or other types of rest?
Well, sleep is like a little funny right now because it's really uncomfortable, but definitely naps. So I'm with you on the naps. Honestly, it's like letting myself literally just chill and not do anything, like watch some extra TV, watch some nonsense that like will just be mindless for myself and can actually let something that's literally just not productive. That's what I'm calling rest right now. Yeah.
That's good.
It's hard.
Wow. Almost there, Catherine.
Yeah. Almost. How about you?
I was thinking what a difference a week makes. When we met, we checked in last Monday and I was not in a really good place. I have just not, for you, Claire, for our listeners, just like not been feeling like myself for quite a long time. And that's been really, really hard for me for a lot of reasons. But like in that period of like just trying to give myself like space and grace through it all. However, over the weekend, I got finally like kind of a burst of maybe energy or just this like sense of feeling more like myself, and was able to like really lean into that. And so what self-care has looked like over the last couple of days has been, did like a nice kind of intense workout this morning, which felt really, really good to kind of engage my body that way. I checked a lot of stuff off my to-do list and over the weekend, which I haven't necessarily had the energy to do recently, and like kind of tidied up my house, like things like that, things that I just haven't felt like I could do physically, just due to my energy level. So that has been really helpful. So it's been a little bit more like the productive side of self-care, not necessarily like the relaxing side of self-care, but it's felt really good to feel a little bit more at home in my body than I have in the last, I don't know, almost a year. So I'm taking it. I'm taking, the last handful of days as a big win.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
I just want to say, I feel like your presence on social media reflects that so much. Like all of a sudden, like Amy came out of the woodwork, like, here I am, and this is what I'm doing. And it was like, yeah, it was so refreshing to see, because I know that those things are so important to you that you were documenting. And so it was really cool that, you were showing them off.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thanks for noticing. But okay, let's shift into our episode. And I know, Catherine already gave us a nice intro to Claire, but as I just alluded to, Claire and I have known each other for over a decade. And Claire has been such an important friend and mentor in my life, and has, especially as a woman in business, been such a great source of wisdom and accountability. And I really, really appreciate that. And so I'm really, really excited that our listeners can meet you, Claire, and hear from you and learn from you as well. So Very
Thank
excited
you.
for today. And so because, this is a wellness podcast, so I know we just talked about self-care, but I would love if you can share with our listeners more in a broader sense, what wellness or living a well life means to you. Self-care is just one piece of that. And so just from that more general perspective, how do you define well-being, wellness?
I mean, that's kind of a huge, huge thing, right? If I really want to sum it up in one thing, I would say living with intent. And I say that not lightly because that's not something I was capable of probably until my early 40s. I was a typical type A on that rat race. And yes, I exercised every day, type A, right? Endurance sports or endurance athlete. I was in finance at the time. I'm married to my wonderful husband, and it was just get up and do. I was a human doing versus a human being. And that it's just a lesson I wasn't ready to learn or knew that it was a lesson in my 20s or my 30s. And then as I progressed into my 40s, I really learned that, okay, wellness. All right, am I present in this moment in this day? Or am I just constantly eyes on the prize for what I'm going to be happy when? I'm going to be fit enough when? I need to get this promotion. I need to hit these benchmarks. And I was just, again, human doing, not a human being in every day. So I wasn't living with intent. And so now I wake up and I'm grateful in the morning for my life and where I am. I have an idea and a roadmap for the day, and I allow so much more flexibility in that. And it hits like all the big things, right? I know I want to nurture my body with food that's going to give me what I need. I know that I'm going to focus on my sleep. I'm going to spend time with my family and my friends, or even check in with them if I'm not actually getting together with them that day. And I have my goals for work that hopefully I'm going to hit that day, and I'm okay if I don't. But now I live my well life being present in every day. And not present on social media is great, but I have to set apart time for that because it can eat up your whole day. But being in my life every day.
So wonderful. I like how you phrase that and how your honesty around how it hasn't always been like this for you, that it's something that you've had to learn over time and adopt over time.
Yeah. Hard lessons to learn.
Yeah, I was just struck even by that last statement you made, and in being in your life, and that I find for me can be so hard, again, as a type A person, always kind of trying to think about the big picture or what's next, and you do miss it. You kind of like miss what's right in front of you, and kind of miss what it's all about and all for. And so I appreciate you sharing your journey to getting there. So you started to tell us a little bit about kind of a little bit of your journey, a little bit of your path to getting where you are. But can you tell us a little about you and how you got to where you are as an athlete and a coach?
Ooh, okay. So that's a long story long, but I'll try to make short. That's going to be tough. So growing up, I'm the youngest of 5 kids. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and I was not allowed to play sports because the youngest of 5 kids, we didn't have a lot of money, and my mom didn't have the time to drive me to places. And my older siblings were pretty much the same. They kind of figured it out and were able to ride a bus. That wasn't an option by the time I came along many years later. So I tried to run track, and I was terrible at it. I learned to play racquetball. I wasn't so great at that either. And then I went away to college in the mountains in Colorado. I'd never seen mountains before. It was really cold, but I got a great scholarship. And I thought that if I went somewhere that was cold, that and I hated cold, that I would do well academically. And I did. And I majored in accounting, having gone to accounting camp at age 16. And my dad gave me the board game Stick the IRS at age 12. So we knew where I was going. Total dork. And lo and behold, I got to the mountains and I found my people. And they didn't care where I was from. They didn't care that I was a nerd or a dork. They didn't have cool clothes. They just are like, hey, you want to go hike in the mountains? And I'm like, okay. So I started hiking and I bought a mountain bike, and I had been biking because the bike was my best friend, because I didn't have a lot of friends growing up. So I learned how to mountain bike. I learned how to hike, and it was just a really great place for me to be. My college didn't really have sororities or fraternities. We did have an accounting fraternity, of course, but I know, super dork. But I took classes like how to learn how to cross country ski and to ultra run and to do all these great things that exposed me to the outdoors. And I became the basis of who I am now. So I started thinking maybe I wanted to switch my career from accounting or my major into like forestry and become a forest ranger. And my mom was like, absolutely not. You have to support yourself and you're going to starve. So you must get your accounting degree. Then you can go back and get another degree if you want, but you have to be an accountant. So during this time and in high school, college, I was exposed to triathlon because of my oldest sister, who's 14 years older than me, was doing them in the 80s and then in the 90s. And I had started doing a little bit of that. And in 1982, and I realize most of your listeners probably weren't born yet, the ABC Wide World of Sports was airing all of these really cool events that were sponsored in large part like by McDonald's. One was the Race Across America, which is a bike race where you literally race across the country nonstop. And the other was the Ironman in Hawaii. And I said, as a little kid, I want to do that. So I set a goal that I wanted to do that by the time I was age 25. And I also wanted to run my first marathon. Mind you, I couldn't run 2 miles without wheezing and gasping. I'd sprint and walk. It was terrible because I never learned how. So long story, even longer, right? So fast forward, and I've started doing training for marathons, and I've started, riding my bike for distance, and I'm swimming a little better and doing triathlons and working in finance and, getting up 4 a.m. I'm in the gym, working out for 2-3 hours or the pool, and going to work all day long, then going to do yoga or something at night and hanging out with my dog. So during this time, I was asked to be a coach for a group called USA Fit. And they were all across the country. And they're like, look, you can run a marathon and you're super friendly and bubbly. Would you coach for us? And they're like, we'll teach you everything you need to know. And I was like, sure. So I started coaching for the Chicago Marathon. And over 3 years as the head coach, we got 386 first-time marathoners across the finish line, primarily women of color in the south side of Chicago. So I was out there running at 4 a.m. or fast walking every single weekend. And I absolutely loved it. And then they opened triathlon coaching, and I started doing that because I was doing it myself and was up to the half Ironman distance at that point. And this is a time before we had internet. We had books. That's really what we had to train with, right? And I loved coaching, but finance is where I was going to make my stake. So fast forward even more. And in 2014, I was working outside of New York for a company and coaching more significantly. I had gotten some certifications for USA Triathlon, and I'm like, okay, I want to do this. So I became the highest level USA cycling coach we could be. I was exposed to USA Weightlifting. I learned about that. I went back to school so that I could pass my CSSC, which is the equivalent of the bar exam or getting your CPA in the exercise science world. So I could feel that I wasn't an imposter, right? That I really knew what was happening in the body. And I used my 20 years of experience racing and started my own company. And so that might have been a mistake, because then focusing all of my attention on all of my athletes made it really hard for me to have enough energy and passion to then want to go out and do my own workouts. So that's still a debate my husband and I talk about a lot. Was that the smartest thing? Because, my hobby and my passion became my work. But the reward that I feel having retired from finance and making a macro difference on a micro level, changing one life at a time, helping people achieve things that they have never been able to do before and didn't even think were possible, it makes every day worth it.
Go ahead. What a journey. What a way to, you changed your entire life from the moment you were told not to do any sports to being in finance to just harnessing your passion and turning it into your everyday. That's incredible.
it's scary, right? So, I mean, you guys know, you're the experts here, the therapists, but when I graduated at my college commencement, they said that we would change jobs 7 times and change our careers twice. And I graduated in the age where you were going to have one career for the rest of your life and one job. So that was like really crazy, that was going to happen. But it totally did. And I'll tell you, I really struggled, and Amy was there for this, but I struggled with my identity because I felt like a baller that I could say I was a CFO of a $2 billion company for a long time. Oh, and yeah, I do Ironman. When I was able to say I coach for a living, oh yeah, I change people's lives. I'm an endurance sports coach. And in a room full of people in Fairfield County that are all hedge funders and everything else. And they're like, oh, you're the dumb blonde wife. Mm-hmm. You're not the baller in the room anymore. Mm-hmm. And so for a long time I trotted out, well, I retired from finance and I did all these things. And these are the companies that I worked for and was, a pretty big deal at. Then they'd be like, oh, and so-and-so, of course I do. And now I train them on a bike. Mm-hmm. That was tough.
That's a different type of baller move, by the way.
Thanks.
But yeah, the identity shift for sure. And again, being a type A person, that I imagine that part of the way that you identified yourself, or maybe, I don't know, making an assumption, maybe I'm projecting, but like where you get your sense of worth might be from kind of what you do or what organization you might be associated with. And so for that to shift and change probably was challenging.
Oh, it's a huge, huge challenge, right? And it was. And I now say, by the way, I'm recovering type A.
Good for you.
Which you and the others like all disagree with. But it's like, if you know me when I was your age, you'd be like, no, totally. She's totally calm now. Yeah, it really was. It was huge. And it was scary too. It was really scary to let that go. And something I learned along the way, and I might have learned this with my fantastic therapist, Sonia Rensvitz, was people would say, oh, what do you do for a living? And I would say, I'm a CFO. Mm-hmm. I didn't say, oh, I manage, $2 billion worth of this stuff, and I coordinate relationships, and I make everything look smooth, and I keep everybody, from getting in trouble with the IRS. We keep everybody on target. I said, and that was my whole identity. It's like, oh, I'm a CFO. Now you ask me what I do. Oh, I change people's lives for work. That's what I do. But a coach is only one facet. My job is only one facet of who I am as a person. But it took a long time for me to understand that.
What do you find to be most challenging when you are coaching your athletes?
Oh, well, that depends on who I'm coaching. So if I'm dealing with a type A, typically male, women tend to get this more. And it's just my experience. I'm not saying that women are this way and men are that way. It's just in my experience coaching. It's really easy to give a type A person something really hard to do. Go to the track, run 16 times 800. That's easy. They'll do it. If I say, get up, you're going to go to have a track workout. I need you to spend 15 minutes foam rolling and stretching and doing your movement prep. And you have to eat before you go. And then you have to hydrate while you're doing it. And then afterwards, within 30 minutes, you need to eat this, but you also need to do 15 minutes of movement so your workout can set in. That, for a type A person, no. The other massive one, massive. And I tell clients, I'm like, I'm going to give you the education. You're smart. You can make the decision. And this is for everyone of all ages, is that, and we know this unequivocally. If you don't believe me, go to the American Cancer Society or go to Huberman Labs if you like that dude better. Alcohol, even one drink, puts you at risk for cancer and all sorts of horrible things. It suppresses deep sleep. It suppresses testosterone. It suppresses human growth hormone. If you want to increase your chance for cancer, dementia, depression, drink alcohol every single time. And again, it's something that, well, we didn't know. I can honestly say growing up, it's not that we, it's like, oh, we can have a glass of wine, we can have a beer. Now we know definitively every single time, even though you may or may not feel drunk, you are putting yourself at massive risk. It is a poison for your brain. And the thing is, as you age, and specifically for women, since our bodies are higher percent body fat just by nature, We have less muscle than men, but as we age, we all lose muscle. Our body loses its ability to deal with it even more. It's still just as dangerous as it is when we're young, but it has a bigger effect. So if I have somebody go, okay, you're going to have your 10-mile run Saturday, and then you're going to have a swim on Sunday or whatever it is. It's really hard to convince people that if they drink Saturday night, that they just negated their whole workout. Mm-hmm. The science is irrefutable. I mean, we know it, right? And those two things, getting people to say, okay, you had to drop your warm up and you had to drop your cool down so you could do your main set. You put your body at risk and you didn't get as much out of your workout. Had you done the warm up and just cut back the main set, we would have gotten more benefit. And we know that because I review all the data. All my clients report up all of their data all the time. And I can see it. I can see how their heart is moving. I can see what their respiration's like. I can track their sleep patterns. I know everything about them because we're all type A, right? And they want to know. But the number one thing as a coach, it's like outside of that for all ages, is drinking.
What do you think makes people so resistant to like the warm up and the cool down, or like refraining from the drink, even though, again, we have all this data, we have all this information? Like, why is it so hard to get them on board?
Well, if it's okay, I'm going to tackle those separately.
Sure.
So the warm up and the cool down, that's not the fun part. The fun part is going out there and working your butt off, getting there, just running around the track. Oh my God, I almost died. That was so hard. That is the sexy part you can tell people about. I went out, I suffered. That was hard. Getting somebody to sit still with their brain long enough to foam roll and feel where the tightness is in their body, or to do their movement prep. So like we say, like the moving, stretching, that kind of thing before the workout, they have to be in the moment and be present. And most people, they are ready for that hard work, and they want the high that comes with it. And it's really hard to get them into their body to say, what does my body need? Because I didn't know for years. I wasn't able to say, okay, let me do these 4 or 5 movements and see, oh, wow, that really hurts. Maybe I need to do some more of that before I go out and do my workout, and I'll have a better workout. It just takes a really long time to get athletes or anybody to be able to listen to their body, because there's so much noise, right? That monkey brain's like constantly going around everything. So some of my athletes have been really successful doing something I learned through Headspace with an open and a close for a session. And that includes their warm up. Like, okay, set a timer for 15 minutes. All right. Open into the workout, or close into whatever we're going to call it. Right. So that's been really helpful, but it's just, people just want to go to the high of it, the hard stuff. They don't, but the reality is the hard for the body, not the hard for the mind. The hard for the mind is slowing down and listening. Right.
As therapists too, like sitting with the hard stuff and not like kind of like busying with, I don't know, an agenda, a list, a to-do, a skill, like this actual sitting with their own thoughts, feelings, body experiences. Yeah, it's very avoidable or desire to be avoidable.
Mm-hmm. So much. And like the comment that I often, I used to hear so much was, I'm going to go crazy. I can't do yoga. Well, as soon as I have them start counting their breaths and counting within their breaths, it's amazing how, we know we have the tricks to try to help them get within themselves. Right. But that's the hardest thing. As far as the alcohol, that's a tough one, right? Because everybody's relationship is different with it. And if you come from a background of addiction, right, that's different, or social pressures. So just like with my sleep, when I started guarding my sleep, I got a lot of flack, and I still get a lot of flack, but most of the people, if they don't respect my choice, then they're not in my life really anymore. And that was, again, a journey, right? And the same thing for alcohol. So years ago, I wanted to be more fit, and I was training all the time. So unless I was in competition and like we went to a party, people like, oh, here's a glass of wine. And I'd be like, I'm not drinking. Well, why not? I'm like, well, because I have an event. And they're like, well, you're not any fun. And I'm like, I'm still me. And what I learned was actually they weren't fun. Right. So when I approached somebody I loved about their drinking, and they struggle, they do yoga and they swim and they do mindfulness, and they're very focused on having balance in life. But I noticed that when things got stressful, they would drink a lot and also smoke a lot of pot. And I could tell that it was affecting their cognition. And I love this person very much. And I sat down with them and I said, look, this is going to be a really hard conversation and you're going to probably get angry at me and you're gonna, like tearing up, but you're going to get really mad at me for what I'm about to say. I'm going to ask you a question. And I just want to ask you this question without judgment. And they're like, okay, I'm fine. I'm like, all right. Could you live your life without another drink of alcohol? Never having another glass of wine at night? And they got so upset. I don't have a problem. I have a really stressful job. I need this to unwind at night. And they gave me all of the reasons why they needed a drug to numb themselves. And it was really, I'm like, okay, now, all right, I'm going to go away. and I want you to just maybe, if you have the capacity to consider why you reacted like in anger and defensiveness versus me asking just a question of, do you think you could eat pickles every day for the rest of your life? I mean, right? Such attachment. And so I think each person has a different relationship with alcohol that drinks. Some people do drink to use it as an antidepressant, even though it is a depressant. Some people use it because of social awkwardness. Hey, I just enjoy a glass of wine, right? And so as a coach and as a friend to people, I'll say, okay, I want you to know what this is doing to your body. And then if you're making that educated decision, it's your decision to make. However, if you come to me and you want to improve your health and you have certain goals and you're sabotaging yourself by doing this, I'm going to call you out on it.
That overlap there is the avoidance. It is the decision to stop drinking for anybody keeps, it can bring up a ton of things that you're not actually facing that you would face, in your 15-minute warm up or your mindfulness exercise. The two are one and the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And not everybody, and I don't know if I can cuss on the podcast, but not everybody is ready to deal with their shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A lot of people don't want to deal with their shit. And a lot of people don't know that they have shit, right?
It's true.
They don't. And that's where say, okay, if you're somebody who said, I would challenge you guys or any of your listeners and said, hey, could you imagine never having another drink again and still having your life? And they react to that way, say, okay, yeah, maybe therapy could help you explore why you're defensive or you feel the need to then come back at me. Right. And just considering that because you're definitely stuffing something down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. And we had a conversation with someone a few episodes back about sobriety and kind of like being sober curious too. And that this resonates a lot with that conversation too. And just kind of asking ourselves these questions around our relationship to alcohol and all of that. And I think that's so helpful. And I guess it's making me think, Claire, and I know this to be true, that so much of what your role is or how you view your role as a coach or how, your company mindset is around coaching is it's not only about the workouts and the training, that it's about the kind of whole mindset and lifestyle changes that people need to make and adapt to in order to, feel good, live well, achieve goals. And so it's not so linear or such a tunnel vision approach to things, which I think is wonderful. And we know that like part of any, like, I guess, setting any goal or, part of setting any goal might be that we might not meet it, that we might experience failure, that we might deal with a lot of challenges along the way, which I imagine you have some experience with, whether as an athlete or in coaching athletes. Like, how do you see that show up in your work? How do you help people kind of work through that? It's inevitable. Failure is a part of life.
Yeah. And this is a tough one. So let me answer that as a coach first, and then I can tell you about me as an athlete. So there's something called a breakthrough workout. that we give as coaches, we give to athletes. And you can imagine when you hear the word breakthrough, okay, we're breaking through something, we're breaking through a previous barrier or a level of strength or whatever it is. And breakthrough workouts suck. Usually clients will see them on their training plan and they'll be like, Coach, how am I supposed to do that? And I was like, well, you're trained for it. Let's see what happens. Let's go. It's a breakthrough workout. You know, it's going to be one of the hardest things you've ever done. And if you can make it through this level, you can do it, then we know you're at the next level. And usually I'll explain this after their first time doing a breakthrough workout because I want to see what they can do. Sometimes, and sometimes they can't do it. It is a really, really hard work. And now it's specific to them at that time in their training, and it's appropriate for them at that time. So it's not saying go out and do this for all my clients. It's them at that time and a specific point because we want to test them and they're ready for that test. Sometimes clients are not ready for the test. So we set them up for success. However, I make the test so difficult that unless they're having their perfect day, they're not going to make it. Mm. And then they come back to me and they're like, oh my God, that was so hard. I had to stop. I had to regroup. I just couldn't do it. I had to go get food and finish this workout. Or holy crap, that was the hardest workout I have ever done. And I'm just like laying on the floor now. Right. So sometimes they make it, sometimes they don't. And they'll usually get the same workout on, like, let's say a Thursday for 3 or 4 weeks in a row. And they're going to see it on their calendar again. And if they didn't make it, we talk about it and like, okay, where was the fail point? All right, let me look at the data. Okay, next week, I want you to try eating this at 20 minutes into the workout. And let's just see if this was a fueling issue. Or, okay, let's drop the intensity by 5% and I can measure that. Now let's see if it's doable. Because if we don't know what we can do in training, we don't know what we can do in real life in a race. And that was a lesson somebody taught me back in 2011. And he's like, Claire, you got to go out and ride as hard as you possibly can and blow up. You can't be afraid of blowing up. You have to know where that edge is if you want to. And we're talking about people at the pointy end of the stick as far as the race, right? But even people that are competing just for themselves, right? We still do it because you want to know where your limits are, right? And we have a phrase, you're either winning or you're learning. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you'll go out and you'll do a workout and it just doesn't go very well. We can't coach with a silo with looking at one workout. We have to look at the whole trend and everything else, right? And it could have just been a bad day. But maybe then we've also found an area where they really need to work even more on that for the next few weeks. And we're going to fine tune that. So we reframe everything as to winning or learning. And yes, I work with elite athletes and that are winning. And I have a few that if they don't win, they're not happy and they don't want to go out there anymore. And that's a really, really hard mindset to work with. But for the rest of them, winning or learning. And so that's why we do a post-race report 24 hours after every race. And I want every single piece of detail that they can give me in addition to their data. And we say, okay, what did you do right? What are 3 things that you nailed? All right, what can we work on? Right? So we reframe, quote, failure. And failure for everybody is different. Maybe it's they didn't win. Maybe it's their goal was to get under 3 hours and they were 3:02. Maybe they were 3:30, right? So we focus on what they've done or if they failed because they set a goal and life got in the way, right? I've had so many things happen, like family member gets sick. They hurt their knee. They got COVID 3 times. Just anything can happen. And then all of a sudden, it's like, we know going into race day, you're not going to hit your goal. We know because your body can't right now. You're carrying grief. You're carrying an injury. You're carrying this. So we need to reset. And sometimes it can feel like a failure, even though we reset, but we really, really work around a healthy mindset from that of expectations of, did you do the best you could do on this day, given what you had? Because life happens and we like to think we're totally in control and we're not. As far as personal failure, I started racing in 1990. And 1 month ago and 6 days, I had my first DNF of my life ever. And a year ago,
did not finish, right?
Sorry, did not finish. Right. So I'm 49 years old. I am turning 50 next January. And I needed to do something that scared me for my goals to really step up for myself. During the pandemic, I spent my time keeping all of my athletes going, and it was a huge and heavy lift. And I just didn't have enough energy to keep them going and to train myself. So I set these huge audacious goals last year that for this year, I would sign up for the Leadville 100 mountain bike race, which is the hardest mountain bike race in North America, and the Run Rabbit Run 50-mile trail run. So
where are those?
Leadville, Colorado, and Steamboat Springs, Colorado.
Wow.
So Leadville is so hard because it starts at over 10,000 feet and goes up to 12,500 feet multiple times. It's also technical mountain biking, not as technical as East Coast riding. Get my snobby dig in there, but it's a big deal. And you've got 12 hours to win a belt buckle. 13 hours technically to finish it. And last year I set these goals that I was going to sign up for both of these races, put myself out there, risk not finishing, which in my mind was failure. Just see how far I could go. Because like it's crazy hard to get into these races, to get into Leadville. So I got in and I started training for it. I'm like, I'm going to do the best I can. I'm in perimenopause, which means I wake up one day and I can run 20 miles. I wake up the next 3 days in a row, and my body says, you can't do anything today. You can go for a walk. And getting to be okay with that's really hard when you have a huge goal and you want to go push and your mind's like, I want to go ride hard. And your body's like, nope, sister, I'm not giving you the hormones to do that today. So I trained for this event and I called every person I know who could help me. And I couldn't train like I've ever trained before because my body is different. And I just had to listen to it every day. But I do have a lot of experience racing ultra and I'm a really good mountain biker. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do my best. And I did. And we had a death in the family the week before. We had all of these things happen. And I raced as hard as I could on that day. And I did everything I could to be my best on that day. And it wasn't good enough. At mile 75, with 4 minutes past the cutoff, a human barrier was formed across the finish or across the course, and they pulled me off. Now, my goal was just to see how far I could get. But a month before the race, I had made a bunch of friends up there and they all told me I was strong enough and I could do it. And I had it in the bag. And I started believing what everybody else was telling me instead of staying true to myself and just being in the moment of the race. And that whole race, I was chasing that clock, trying to make it. And I knew when it was going to be close. To give perspective, about, I think 2,400 people started and about 1,600 or 1,400 can finish. And the winner was 26 years old and he set a new record and finished in 5 hours and 45 minutes. And I was really pissed off when they published his data after the race. And they said, he was working at like 70%, 4% of his heart rate, and they had his power output and all this kind of stuff. And they're like, yeah, and the people that, were in the back of the race, they're only working at 50% effort. And I'm like, I pulled my data. And on a relative basis, I worked just as hard as he did for 9 hours before I got pulled. And I'm old enough to be his mother. And, I was embarrassed. That was the number one thing I felt. I was embarrassed that I couldn't do it. I set myself up for the hardest possible race at a time in my life when my body is not consistent. And I had let everybody tell me I could do it. And you have to believe you can do it if you're going to go into something that hard. But I learned a lot. And, I've got some ideas for next year because I'm going to get in again, doggone it. And I'm going to just do my best. And, people who live there and have done it for up to 25 times told me, like, look, we didn't always make it. You just don't see that because you see social media and you only see the people that did it and that they won. And the fact that you made 75 miles and you only missed by 4 minutes after 9 hours of racing, I was only off my bike for a total of 8 minutes. Had I peed on my bike, I might have made it the whole time. I mean, that's literally the difference. And that was really hard. And fortunately, I have an incredible partner in life, my husband, who talked to me and he's like, look, if you don't push your limits, how are you going to know what you can do? And I'm like, he's like, what would you tell your athletes? And I'm like, well, that's what I'd say. Like, how much did you learn? And, like all the stuff I would have told my athletes, he's like, yeah, I listen to you all the time on the phone. So he was able to tell me because I didn't hold myself to the same standards that I hold my athletes. I didn't have compassion for myself. And I had the embarrassment. I'm the coach. I'm supposed to know how to do all this, but I set a goal that it's not impossible, but it's really, really, really difficult. It is the hardest race. And I can do it. And there are other strong women who were great role models that are in the late 50s that I met who totally crushed it and did it. And it's having respect for that race, right? But I learned a lot. I'm going to go back and do it. And, this Run Rabbit Run last weekend, I was supposed to go and do the 50 miler. Well, we had life stuff happen and my body didn't altitude adapt the way I did because of the stupid hormones. So I did everything right. Right. And so I only had a few long runs in me and some hikes, and it was a 50-mile trail run. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to run half and have a really great time fast hiking. And I called my coach originally, like 2 days after Leadville. And I'm like, I just want to eat bonbons and quit. And he's like, look, really generous cutoff times. Just go fast hike it and you'll have a blast. It's beautiful. And they have great aid stations. So just go do half of it. Just go have fun. And I did. Meanwhile, he was doing a 204-mile trail run in Switzerland and finished, right? And I'm like, okay, I suck. I can only do this. But it's not about him and it's not about me, right? In that regard, it was just go out and do it. And I did. So on Saturday morning, I got up and I went out and I'm like, okay, I arranged to have somebody pick me up at the halfway point. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'll make it 22 miles, maybe I'll make it 28. And those are the only times you have access to a road for somebody to get you. Otherwise, you're in for the long haul. And I did. And I went out and I did 28 miles and I feel great today. It was only 2 days ago. And that's awesome. Could I have done 50? Maybe. But I didn't want to push myself to that point this year because my goal was to see the whole course and see what I could do so I could do the race next year. So coming back and sitting with that embarrassment and accepting that I had goal inflation, that I had a goal to see how far I could go. And then I let it inflate to, I can totally nail this because everybody told me I can, and setting myself up for a failure in a sense. It was really hard. But now that I'm on the other side of it, I can tell people, I made it to mile 75 and got pulled with 4 minutes to go. And people are like, oh my God, that's incredible. That's the hardest race. And I'm like, yeah, it is. And that's how far I made it. Mm-hmm. Next year, my goal is to hit all 105 miles.
Wow. Claire, you touched on a lot when it comes to failure and approaching.
Sorry.
No.
I love to talk.
I loved everything that you had to say. I just want to step back a little bit. When you first were talking about your clients that you're coaching, you were talking about how you essentially train them for failure. You put them through
finding their limits.
Right. You want to make sure
a fail point
their limits in their training to prepare them for if and when they get to that point, when they're in a race, when they're in that situation that you're in, and they can face it. They can know what they're in for and also work with it. Right?
Yes, absolutely. And on race day, maybe they can't even go harder because of because of adrenaline, right? Or a closed course. Maybe they can do a little bit more, but they know what that difficulty feels like. If they've hit that and pushed through it, maybe they can do that, in the race too.
Mm-hmm. And then when it came to you, when it comes to you, and of course, this happens to all of us, right? We're like, oh, maybe I'm different. And then we're not.
Total double standard, right? Total double standard. Oh, you look great, but I look fat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So it wasn't until you were, you were adopting this other mindset from other people. You were getting that noise from others saying you can do it, that you were on track to have this race really be unique to you and unique to what you were able to do. And then you got this noise that kind of just started to influence you and made you think otherwise. Had you stayed in that mindset, it seems like you would have kind of had the same one that you had at the 50 miler, where you actually just accepted and had a lot more self-compassion around where you were at and what you were capable of at that time and what your goal was.
I would have enjoyed the day a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had raced a preview race the month before, a 50 miler that everybody told me was almost impossible. And I told my husband who's going to crew for me, I said, I don't know when I'm going to get to the aid stations. I don't know when I'm going to finish. I'm just going to do my best all day and be in the moment. And I crushed it. Mm-hmm. And when I woke up the morning of Leadville, I was a nervous wreck. And I don't get like that before races anymore. And I was a mess. And it was, all this expectation that I let get built onto me and the outcome instead of focusing on the process. Now, again, we had some difficulties happen and some other things that popped up. But instead of just being proud and going out there and still working just as hard as I would have, but being in the moment and enjoying it, there was a monkey on my back telling me bad things in my ear all day long.
Gosh. There's like Catherine, you were saying, there's so much in what you shared that stuck out for me that I want to highlight. One is you're either winning or learning. I love that because we can't always win, and we can reframe failure as an opportunity to learn. And one of the things that it sounds like from your own experience with, I'll put in quotes, failure, is you said you learned a ton. And, when you go back next time, you'll have a different idea of how to approach it. And I imagine that means the data of what you learned about your race and all of that. But it also sounds like maybe it is trying to, block out the noise. And maybe it is trying to remind yourself of why you did it. Like, it sounds like you learned things other than just data, which I think is so helpful to have that reflection point. The other thing I loved that you have talked about a lot through this episode is being mindful of where your body is and like what it can and can't do. Again, as women, we are so, impacted by our hormones and our cycle, and also giving yourself and your body compassion and grace for what it is doing that we have no control over. I think that's so helpful. I also love that Coach Clare has a coach too, that you have someone that you kind of lean on that helps support and guide you as well. And I think there is this idea that like once you become a quote unquote expert in something, that you know it all, or that you're expected to know it all. And that just knowledge isn't so limited that way. And while we heard all of your credentials, that I love that you still have like that lifelong learner in you, that you still want to continue to learn and continue to find your edge and where your limits are, with the support of someone else too. I think that's really awesome as well.
Well, thank you. One thing, I remember that you had referred a book to me that I thought was really helpful. I think it was How Women Rise.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting. After the race, all I could think about were my failures. Like I couldn't train harder, but I didn't train hard enough. I wasn't altitude adapted enough, so I should have done more, but I couldn't do more. And this past year, and I went internal for all the reasons why I failed. Right. And then I went to those feelings, and it was funny because when we were racing to the deadline, because we knew we were going to have to push, and the winds turned on us. So the longer you're out there, the winds turn. That's what happened in the mountains. And the people in the pointy end of the race, the beginning, they hopefully make it through before the winds change. So it's a different race when you're out there twice as long and the weather changes. And we were fighting a headwind, and I knew that the headwind was going to exist. And I put my nose down and I did my best to get through it. And I'm proud of the effort that I did. But it was interesting, the guys, it was the winds. It was the course. It wasn't their training. Mm-hmm. It was their training, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And course knowledge and everything else. And I just, it's just really interesting because I beat myself up and other people were blaming the course.
Mm-hmm. Right. That you, as you said, you internalized it and made it your fault. Whereas other athletes, or maybe male athletes, were just more accustomed to saying, yeah, it's the course.
It's not my fault. Yeah, this is the hardest race. The 12% of the racers are women. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's just the course. It was, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, it's a brutal course, but mm-hmm. It's just an observation of how it was altitude and it was the course. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I wasn't trained enough, but the course was the same for everybody.
Right. Right. But I mean, you do bring up a good point, just how, we as women are socialized to kind of take a lot of the responsibility for a lot of things, that there is an expectation that we can do it all or should do it all. And that can really impact us. And as you're saying, we internalize it too. I love that you brought that up.
When you're working with your athletes and they inevitably, experience that failure that we're talking about, what is the training then like with them around that? Like, what do you end up communicating to them? That's like literally, I guess, in a more general sense, but then maybe just more specifically to what it is that they're trying to work towards.
You mean like in a breakthrough workout or a race, if they don't hit their goal?
Yeah.
Well, so I have a saying, I have a lot of sayings, but control what you can control, so that when the inevitable and things that happen out of your control happen, you have capacity to deal with it, right? So again, we're going to look for all the reasons. There's always a reason why. And maybe that reason was just that you were tired on that day, but unfortunately with the data, I can prove to them that they were tired. So, I was fine. So I'm data driven and I'm science based, right? But there's also art, and I understand that humans are humans. And on a given day, we look for the reasons why. And my athletes go into their events or their training knowing what the expectation is, and they've got a lot of metrics, and they know what they should feel like on that day. And so after we look at the data and they write their report, we go through it all. And usually the people that have been with me for a long time already know what I'm going to say, right? They already know, okay, I got behind on my nutrition, this. Okay, so there's cause and effect. Put gas in the car doesn't go. But then there's other things like, and I'm just so proud of one of my athletes. She was at Ironman Lake Placid. She got food poisoning the night before. And she was really sick. I didn't know. I wasn't there. But she texted me on race morning. I got the text after she had started and said, I've got crazy diarrhea, but I feel I'm hydrating. I took an Imodium. I feel good. If I don't feel good, I'll stop. And she pushed through the whole race. She had her family bring her ginger ale at the aid stations. She was able to stay on her hydration plan. The diarrhea dissipated, but she felt, garbagey. And she's been training for a year for this event. And she's like, I just kept, and she can verbatim pretty much tell you anything I'm going to tell you right now, right? Like she can speak, Coach Clare, and she's incredible. And she did every single thing I would have recommended to her to do, or supposed a doctor would have told her to do, right? And she finished the race, and she finished it maybe an hour slower. I mean, we're talking like 15 and a half hours, right? Versus like a 14-hour race or a 13-hour race. It's a long day when your stomach is sideways. But she stuck with it, and she's just like, I know I needed to stay hydrated. I know I need to do this. I know I need to do that. I wasn't as fast as I wanted to be. But these are all the things that I nailed. And Ironman chose to highlight her as one of their athletes for this event. And then she had this, so she was publicly out there as somebody who's doing it. And then she had a slower race finish, I think, than she wanted to, and she was trained for, but she totally crushed it. And she was able to own that she totally crushed it. I'm like, honestly, if I had screaming diarrhea, I don't know that I would have done the race. Yeah. But she wanted it, and she knew who she was. So I guess, Catherine, what I would say is there's always a reason why. Sometimes that reason is concrete and we can find it in the data. Sometimes it's just the day. Sometimes it is. Sometimes there is no rhyme or reason. You just had a bad day. That's, with these big events, like there's a big race coming this Saturday, the Jones Beach, New York 70.3, and now they're predicting rain. They've also had a problem with wind, and they had a problem with massive people getting welt from bug bites in their training. It could happen. Is it going to totally change your race? Yes. So it's all of the variables on any given day that get thrown at you that we have to consider. So we always have a goal. We know what a body can do or might be able to exceed and do, but it's pulling it all together and doing it. And as long as you can honestly say you did everything you could to get there, and you did everything on the day to be successful and followed your plan, that's the win.
So it's all this realistic normalizing that you do with your athletes, I assume all throughout their training, that then when they approach this in a race like this one woman, they already have it. They already have that kind of like stuck this Coach Clare dialogue in their head of like, I did crush this. I had food poisoning and I still did this and I still got here and I finished.
Mm-hmm. So it's funny. Some people do. It usually takes maybe for an Ironman athlete, usually they're working with me for at least a year. And so they get a lot, and they often tell me, and I know that they're really absorbing their training when they tell me that there's two Coach Clares. There's the one with the pitchfork and the one with the halo. And they say, yeah, I was on my ride and I wanted to stop and I just wanted to give up. And then, you were there and had a little pitchfork, or I was over here and you were telling me what a great job I was doing. And, I'm like carrot and stick. I don't know like where this stuff comes from, but right. So I do educate and enable my athletes to be successful on race day for sure. And normalizing, rationalizing, is that what we're saying? There's a winner. There's only one person who wins this race. And I'm not coaching people that I haven't passed, but at least age group, but my people people I'm coaching are not typically going to win the race. Like a smaller local race, yeah, they're going to win, or they might win their age group. Like I have people in age group, like in an Ironman, but those are exceptional athletes. They're gifted. They've got great genes. They're monsters. Most people, they're not that, right? So you got to know why you're doing it. And that's the reason to do it. And the thing is, they talk about it's the journey, not the destination. Well, when you're committing, maybe it's your first 5K, maybe it's the marathon. It's the transformation that happens to you every day when you show up for yourself and you do your training, or you show up for yourself and you meal prep, or you show up for yourself and you go to, you went to bed on time and you got up and you feel good. Those are all the things. And, it takes some athletes have to blow up in races and not listen to the guidance. I mean, they're not machines. And it's really common, especially in male athletes, to get a testosterone surge during the race and to go for it on the bike. And they blow up on the run. I mean, statistically, it just happens to be, it's very common for beginners and more so for men, that they go too hard and they blow up and they have a really terrible walk instead of a run, right? I'm like, okay, well, this is what happened. You can control it next time, and maybe we'll have a different outcome. Mm-hmm. Usually we do.
Well, it sounds like what you're also talking about, because that's such a real thing, right? Like there's only one winner, really, like one winner. And so it is redefining what winning actually is for each athlete. And for each race, and maybe it is like even after the outcome, you're still looking for the wins. It's not black or white as you look at data. Like and you said this at the top, like we're looking at what went well, what was good, and then looking at areas for learning. And I think that's such a nice kind of, I guess, main takeaway as we think about, for those of us that aren't high performance athletes. But that is such a helpful takeaway, that it doesn't need to be this all or nothing mindset. Like either I'm like crushing it completely and winning, or at life or whatever, at work, or I suck and I should just give up. Like there is a balance there. There is a both and there.
And sometimes people will call me and they have a goal. Like I want to, if you told me, Claire, I want to do an Ironman next year, I'd be like, well, Amy, I appreciate that. And that's great. And we can talk about that. But a more realistic goal is to put you on a 3-year plan, right? And this is where you are now. You don't know how to swim. You can ride a bike.
Claire knows I don't know how to swim properly. I can jockey paddle.
Right. It's like, okay, your butt's probably going to get sore if you ride 5 miles, but you can run and you can walk really fast. So, okay, when you're amazing, and not speaking specifically to you, but like, right. You work out, you're strong, and you've got a good base, but also you've got an incredible therapy practice and you work a lot. Mm-hmm. Do you really have time to train for this? Right. But so we look at that, and then that's where it's helpful for somebody to talk to me and say, hey, this is my goal. I want to do an Ironman next year. I'm like, okay, let's talk about your life. Do you have time to train for this? Okay, let's talk about where you are in your training. All right, we have some pretty big benchmarks we have to hit along the way, and your progression might take 2 years. probably going to take 3, maybe it'll take a year, depending on where you're starting. And having that external of, okay, all right, you know what? Let's change. Let's flip the script. Yes, Ironman. Yes, in 3 years. Next year, okay, maybe stepping up to an Olympic, sprint to Olympics or a half Ironman. How do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Mm-hmm. And so we need to look at where you're at now, where you want to go, and what's a realistic time frame, and what are all the steps along the way? Because a goal without a plan is just a wish, mm-hmm. Right?
Right.
And I think that's where it's like a big part of my job is being realistic, but then also saying, okay, here's an area, yeah, we're going to aim for this, but you might hit here. But even if you hit here, it's really, really good. Okay. But if you can't hit here, then we need to sit back and have a conversation. Mm-hmm. And maybe we need to reevaluate whether this is going to make it. Like if somebody comes to me and they want to run the New York Marathon and they constantly keep getting shin splints, maybe we need to back up and do a year of strength training and physical therapy to get them ready. Or maybe their body just isn't going to be a marathon body. Mm-hmm. And those are the hard conversations to have. But most people are generally pretty open to, okay, that's an ambitious goal based on my experience in the science. This is the safest way you can do it.
Yeah.
And I think it helps to talk, to have a mentor, to have somebody else to talk to about your goals. So they can be like, you are like, you in my business too, and holding each other accountable. Like, okay, oh yeah, this is a realistic goal, but I need help setting the steps to get there, or I'm not going to be able to achieve this on my own. It's just going to be a wish.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Well, and as someone to help keep you accountable. And I also, when you were saying there's like this kind of like reach goal, right? And then there's this maybe lower level goal. And even if you don't reach that, that's still information. And so you're still kind of looking at it from a non-judgmental view, but more of like, how can we be as objective about this as possible about what it might be telling us about your goal? I think that's, super helpful.
And celebrating all those little wins, right? So back in the day, I had a terrible accident and wasn't able to exercise for a long time. And I gained 15 pounds just really, really quickly. And I needed help to get it off. So I went to Weight Watchers and learned how to eat healthier and, do some different things. And I wanted to lose 15 pounds, but they celebrated every 0.2 of a pound loss that I had, and it took me 6 months and I did it, but it was really poignant that, okay, what do you mean 0.2? That's nothing. And they're like, no, that's consistent. And you're doing it every week, or you're at least not, backsliding. So slow and steady wins the race. Mm-hmm. We just want to, better is better.
Right. Better.
And that was great.
I like that. Any last final things that you want to share with our audience, Claire? Any things that we didn't touch on that you think are important for them to hear?
So many things, right?
We can always have you back.
I would say that I want to empower people, because you can always, if you have a goal, or if you want to feel better, or you want to be happier, you can always do it. You can always be better. And I'm not saying that you have to strive to be the best or, perfect, but I remember as a child seeing Richard Simmons on TV with this man who was, I don't know how big he was, but he had his arms out to this and he was stuck in a bed. And Richard Simmons gave him a baton and put on some classical music and asked him to conduct the music. Like, I'm a conductor, right? But to just do that because it was exercise, and this guy started breathing heavier, right? And that was exercise for him. When my middle sister wanted to run her first 5K, and was 5'2" and very heavy and has some autoimmune issues, and she really struggles. I said, start with one driveway. Start with one driveway. You don't have to go to the high school track where all the other moms are. Just do one driveway. And she did, and she did it, and she walked it. And then she went on to do 5 miles. And eventually 5 years later, she went to do her first triathlon, right? She got a bunch of friends together and they all swam on their own time. Then they went on a bike ride on their own time. And then they went for a walk run on their own time. And we all went and we celebrated. And that was her huge win. And then she took up yoga and she got 2 inches back in her spine from scoliosis, in her 40s. Now she's 5'4". I mean, these are incredible things. Is anybody giving her a ribbon or telling her that, you won the race? No, but she improved her own life, right? My mom at the age of 65 decided she wanted to make it to 85. So I got her a Cooking Light subscription back then, and she learned to cook healthier, and she started going to the gym and lifting weights. So comparison is the thief of joy. Mm-hmm. If you're always looking at what somebody else can do or what they are doing, that's not, be true to yourself. And maybe you don't know what to do, right? So reach out to somebody like me or your therapist who can say, okay, why don't you try going for a walk? And why don't you try maybe turning your phone off for 15 minutes and having a bubble bath, right? Or an Epsom salt bath in my case, right? So I believe that anyone at any age can feel better in their body. And you can. And if you can't find the resources, then reach out to people like us and we will guide you and give you those resources, because we just want you to be better, because a rising tide raises all boats, right? Oh, all the quotes today. What can I say?
I love that. But so where can people find you?
ClareZecherCoaching.com. Otherwise, Instagram, Go Coach Clare, and that's Clare. I am on Facebook, but not as much. But Insta is a great place to get me on DM. Otherwise, ClareZecherCoaching.com. Hopefully, the show notes will have a link for that, and people can reach out. And if you've got a question or something that's you really want to know more about, we've got a history in our blog posts of some great articles, and we're always happy to write about what you guys want to know about.
Love that. We will absolutely include all of your links in our show notes for sure.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Claire. This is so great. I'm so happy to have you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. It was really great. Great to talk with you guys today.
Thank you again, Coach Clare, so much for joining us today and empowering us. That was awesome. For all of you listeners, thank you also for following along, for listening, for rating, reviewing, subscribing to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Don't forget to check out and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Revive Center for Wellness, where you can watch full episodes of our Wishing You Well podcast, and check out our bonus weekly podcast, Reactivity TV, where we give our therapist takes and perspectives to all things trending TV and movies. Don't want to miss that. You can also check us out on Instagram at ReviveCFW, Catherine at Catherine Van Eyck, me at Email Barrow LCSW. Check out our website, revivecfw.com, and send us your emails to wishingyouwell@revivecfw.com. Until next time, we are wishing you well.